We are picking up Pei Zayin Beis 87b by the Mishnah. Sheva Midos Shalach Hayu B'Mikdash. We'll say there are 7 different measurements of liquid in the Beis HaMikdash. 7 different liquid measurements. Yesterday we spoke about dry measures. Today we're speaking about liquid measures. What were they? Hin, Chatzia hin, Shlishes hin, Revias hin, Lug, Chatzi lug, Revias lug. So we'll say, so these are the different 7 measures that they had in the Beis HaMikdash. Rabbi Eliezer bar Reb Tzadok Omer, Shenasos hayu behin. So Rabbi Eliezer bar Reb Tzadok says something very interesting, disagreeing with the Tanakama, and ultimately telling us that what? That there was one utensil in the Beis HaMikdash called the hin. In that utensil, there were markings in the utensil itself, showing you ultimately, again, up until this point, is for a par, right, for the oil for the par, up until this point the ayil, up until this point for the kever. So we'll say, what Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Tzadok seems to be saying is that halacha l'maisa, you didn't have multiple different utensils. Instead, what you just had was one big utensil with multiple notches, and each notch showed you where to fill up the utensil for each respective carbon. So the Gemara goes right to Rabbi Shimon Omer, lo haya sham hin. Rabbi Shimon says there was no hin measurement. Why was there no hin measurement? V'chi ma haya hin mishamish. Because what do you need a hin measurement for in the Beis HaMikdash? Now Rashi points out over here, regular Rashi on top, v'chi ma haya hin mishamish, v'halo lo hutzrichu lo me'olam elapam achas haymi me Moshe, l'shemen hamishcha. Dichsiv shemen zayis hin. So we'll say, interestingly enough, what Rabbi Shimon says over here is as follows. Rabbi Shimon says there was never a need for a hin because the hin measurement was never used in the Beis HaMikdash. When was the hin measurement used historically? It was used for the production of the shemen hamishcha, for the anointing oil. But because anointing oil was just made once, it wasn't part of ongoing service. Therefore, halacha l'maisa, you didn't require that type of utensil. So the Gemara says, Ela midi yisera shalug umechza haisasham. Rather, again, Rabbi say in Rabbi Shimon's model, because there is no hin utensil, there's no hin utensil. Therefore, again, he wants to fill out the number of 7 as well, that there are 7 liquid measures. So what does he substitute instead of hin? He says there was a lug and a half utensil. A utensil that was a lug and a half in size. Shebahaya moded leminchas kohen gadol. And I will say this lug and a half utensil was used to measure out for the minchas kohen gadol, the minchas chavitin. Lugu mechza baboker, because they would use a lug and a half of oil in the morning. Lugu mechza ben arba'im, a lug and a half of oil ultimately again in the afternoon. Good, says the Gemara. Tan Rabbanon, Sheva midos shalach hayu b'mikdash. So the Brisa says over here, there were 7 liquid measures in the Beis HaMikdash. What were they? Revias lug, chatzi lug, v'lug, revias ahin, shlishes ahin, chatzi ahin, v'hin. Div Rabbi Yehuda. So we'll say Rabbi Yehuda, good, quoting the 7 different measurements. Now you're going to see that's just pretty much restating the Mishnah. Rabbi Meir Omer, hin, chatziahin, shlishisahin, reviasahin, lug, v'chatzi lug, urevias lug. So we'll say so Rabbi Meir seems to quote the same exact measurements. Just what do you notice? What did he do? He reversed the order. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda ultimately, again, is going from the smallest measurements ultimately to the larger measurements. Rabbi Meir goes from the larger measurements ultimately to the smaller measurements. We'll discuss what the significance of that is in just a little bit. Rabbi Shimon is the same opinion in the Mishnah. Lo haya sham hin. There was no measure hin at all. Because they both say, what would you need a hin measurement for? Because as we said before, the hin was only used in the production of the Shemen HaMishcha, and the Shemen HaMishcha was not an ongoing process. Top of Peches, so if that's the case, says Rabbi Shimon, Esmi Avi Tachtov, so if that's the case, ultimately, again, that there is no hin measurement, so then halacha l'maisa, again, what measure should I use instead of the hin? Ella, mida yisera shalog umechza haisasham, shebaha yamode lechavite kohen gadol. So we'll say in Rabbi Shimon's model, there was no hin, but instead there was a measure, a utensil, that contained a lug and a half. What was the point of the lug and a half? That was the necessary amount for the chavite kohen gadol. The chavite kohen gadol in the morning, the chavite kohen gadol in the afternoon. Good. Amrulo, chatzi lug haisasham. Ve'afshar l'shar b'chatzi lug. So Rabbi say this is actually very interesting. So Rabbi Shimon says to round out the number 7, and we'll discuss why everyone is hung up on 7. But to round out the number 7, Rabbi Shimon says because we're removing the hin measurement from the list, we're going to substitute it ultimately again with the utensil which held a lug and a half. So the other rabbis asked Rabbi Shimon, why you need a utensil which holds a lug and a half? Now I understand the significance of a lug and a half. That's the amount of oil necessary for the chavite kohen gadol in the morning and in the afternoon. But I have a different idea. Everyone agrees that there was a utensil which measured a half a lug. If there's a utensil which measures a half a lug, then what? Just use that utensil 3 times, and you'll get your lug and a half. Why do you have to start going ahead and producing a new utensil just to go ahead and get to a lug and a half? Amar lahem af lidivrechem chatzi lug lo ye'asa. So Rabbi Shimon retorts back to them. He says, okay, well, even according to that logic, I could say, you know what? Don't make a chatzi lug utensil. And it's why? Because you have a utensil that is a revius lug. And if that's the case, I will say, all you need is what? Use the revius lug twice, and you'll get your chatzi lug. Ve'afshar l'shar b'revius ela zeh klal b'mikdash. Rather, Rabbi says the Gemara, this is actually really amazing. We have a klal in the Beis HaMikdash, which is kli sheshimsha midazu eino mishamesh mida acheres. Rabbi say, what was the principle in the Beis HaMikdash? The principle in the Beis HaMikdash was that you had specific utensils for specific measurements. We do not use one utensil to measure something that is not its exact measurement. And let me say that a little bit better. That in the Beis HaMikdash we have exact measuring utensils. And we do not go ahead and use a utensil of one measurement to go ahead and use and measure out some smaller measurement than the actual size of the utensil. Does that make sense? So in other words, meaning we're not going to use a revius lug to measure out. We're not going to use two fillings up of the revius lug to measure out the chatzi lug, or we're not going to use 2 chatzi lugs to go ahead and measure out a lug. When I say why not? Why not? Because if you end up doing that, what inevitably ends up happening? Estimation. I will say you have to understand something. The Beis HaMikdash was a precise science. Everything in the Beis HaMikdash was precise. Why is everything in the Beis HaMikdash precise, Abosai? Because halacha l'maisa, the Beis HaMikdash was to be a metaphor for Judaic life. How are you supposed to live your Yiddishkeit? With precision. Not with ambiguity. Sometimes we say, I think this is okay. Right? I think this is all right. I'll say, no, it's either all right or it's not all right. And if it's not sure, 9 out of 10 times you're deluding yourself because you know it's not right, but you're telling yourself it's okay. This is the Mishnah Pirkei Avos. The Mishnah Pirkei Avos says, Al tarbe la'aser umados. Don't tithe by estimation. And the Rabbeinu Yonah says on that, he says, even if you're going to give more than you have to, don't live life by estimation. You have to live life with precision. You have to know what you're doing. You have to have clarity of right and wrong. You have to know mutter aser, tamei tahar, kosher treif. Person has to have clarity in life, because inevitably, if you're walking around in a Judaic fog and you have spiritual ambiguity, you're going to make significant mistakes. Therefore, I'll say, where does this all come from? Where does this whole Hashkafas HaChaim come from? See, you thought there's no Musar in Menachos, but there is. Rabbi say that's what this entire sugya is about. This entire sugya is telling me, do not go ahead and estimate when measuring out. The Beis HaMikdash has a specific set of measuring utensils, so that every measurement should be precise. So the Gemara goes weiter. Fine. My ika bein Rabbi Meir Rabbi Huda. So also listen to this. Now let's go back for just a moment. So if you remember again, Rabbi Huda and Rabbi Meir had a machlokes on Amud Beis. We'll say, what was their machlokes? The 7 different measurements. So remember again, I just want to point out, the measurements are the same. They just quoted them in different orders. Rabbi Huda goes ahead and ultimately quotes them in smallest to biggest, and Rabbi Meir quotes them from biggest to smallest. And we'll say, now obviously, they're arguing about something. So it says the Gemara, what are they arguing about? So here we go. So my Ika ben Rabbi Meir Rabbi Huda. I'm Rabbi Yochanan. Beirutze midos Ika ben Rabbi. Is actually very interesting. What they're arguing about is what the Gemara calls Beirutze midos. So we'll say, so right after we have this whole spiel about exact measurements, look what the Gemara talks about over here. So look at Rashi Kisveyad, the bottom Rashi, second line in Beirutze midos. Hamali Godish, Kishamodidin Yayin, listen to this. Omimali Kli Biyoser, Yeshpo Beirutsin. So we'll say, when you go ahead, so Rashi's example over here is with wine, because wine is the easiest illustration of this. When you go ahead and you fill up a utensil with wine, you fill it up to the top, so almost inevitably there's some amount of spillage that occurs. That spillage goes over the sides of the kli. So what happens? If you pour the smaller utensil into a larger utensil, then what? Nimtsu beirutzin besocho. Then I will say, it turns out that the larger utensil actually contains more wine than what was contained in the smaller utensil, which is an interesting idea. So remember again, if I overflow the smaller utensil and immediately pour it off into the larger utensil, the assumption we're working with is the larger utensil will catch the contents of the smaller utensil and also what we call the beirutzin. The overflow droplets will also come in. Therefore, again, it turns out that the large utensil will have more than the smaller utensil. Ve'im lav, no fala aretz me'elehen. And if not, ultimately, again, the overflow droplets ultimately fall to the ground. So watch this. So the Gemara says, Liman da'amar mimata lemala. So also according to the opinion who looked at the measurements of the Beis HaMikdash from smallest to greatest, kasavar beirutse hamidos niskachu. He holds also that the overflow is consecrated as well. Urevius yohevle rachmana lemoshe. And the revius lug ultimately again is the shear that ultimately again HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave to Moshe Rabbeinu. V'amar lei she'er deka aili lehu berutzin. So we'll say, look at Rashi for just a moment. So kasavar. So the man do amar mimata lemala. The chashiv revius berishon. So both according to the opinion who looked at the first midah, which this is the sheet of Rabbi Huda, who looks at the revius log as in the beginning of the measurements. I'm looking at Rashi still. Rashi kisveyan on the bottom. Kasav beirutze amidos niskachu urevius yohev rachmana lemoshe va'amarle. So the Gemara says eila asei chatzi log umishtei chatzi log v'chin ad hin. Sha'ar da'ali bu beirutsin. Just read that next Rashi, then we'll go back to the Gemara. She'ehei achatzi log godol she'kansu bo shtei revios u'beirutzin. Debistama hachi hu shema'arek li katan sharavius l'soch kli godol kigon chatzik. So according to this first opinion, he holds that ultimately again, Chalish Baruch Hu gives Moshe Rabbeinu the revius log. That was the initial shear, and the assumption is that the shiurim go up in ascending order, recognizing that when you pour, so to speak, not literally, but so to speak, from one kli to the next, so the additional droplets of the smaller utensil go into the larger utensil and become kadosh as well. The take-home message, Rabosai, from the order of the kli is just like if you pour from the smaller kli into the larger kli receives both the contents of the smaller kli as well as the overflow droplets, assuming that you pour it off immediately. What that's telling you is that overflow becomes kadosh as well. That's the takeaway message from this. But the one who goes in and reckons the shiurim again, we'll say from largest to smallest, kasava beirutze midos lonis kachu. He holds, we'll say, that the overflow of the utensil does not become kadosh. Vehin yohevle rachmana lemoshe. And in fact, the original measure that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives to Moshe Rabbeinu was the hin. Now granted, he gives him the hin, as we saw before by the Shemen HaMishcha, v'amarle sha'er baha dikanafki beirutzin. Use this as your measurement so that the beirutzin, the overflow, falls off. See, Rabbi say, obviously, if you were to take the hin utensil and what? Pour it into the next smallest utensil. That utensil, of course, would not even hold all of the contents of the hin utensil, and certainly wouldn't what? Certainly wouldn't go ahead and hold the overflow also. So we'll say what's amazing about this is really fascinating because it seems like it'd be so much easier for them just to say we're arguing about overflow. But understand what's happening over here. The Gemara is filled with this. The Gemara is filled with statements that serve multiple purposes. So what's happening with Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Huda is they're both giving the list of the different shiurim because we need to know the 7 shiurim in the Beis HaMikdash. And by the way that they arrange it, they're also allowing it to serve almost as a, not mnemonic, but they're allowing it to serve as a way to remember another halacha. What other halacha? Does overflow of a utensil become kadosh or not? Rabbi Yehuda telling me yes, and that's why again he arranges the utensils from smallest to largest, because if you overflow a small utensil, pour it off immediately into a large utensil, the large utensil will contain what Rabbi say? The contents of the smaller utensil and the overflow, reminding me that the overflow ultimately again is kadosh. versus the large utensil to the small utensil, which is Rabbi Meir. If you pull the large utensil to the small utensil, so obviously you'll say the small utensil doesn't even contain all of the contents of the larger utensil, much less, certainly not the overflow. Therefore, telling us that the overflow is not kadosh as well. Abaye or Abaye says no. That's not the machlokes. The chuli alma beirutz amidos ikal meimer neskachu. Everyone in Abaye's model, everyone agrees that what overflow is kadosh. I should say it differently. The chuli alma beirutz amidos ikal meimer neskachu. The ikal meimer lo neskachu. So both say. So Abaye says that's the machlokes. That's the machlokes. V'hacha ultimately again b'maleim kamiflagi. So we'll say, what does this mean? Mandar milamala lamata. So we'll say here what they're arguing about is how much you fill up utensils. Look at Rashi. B'maleim kamiflagi dechsev shneim solas maleim v'huadin l'chol midos tikra man dechashiv hin bereisha kasaver maleim shelo yechsar v'shelo yosir hilchach yaseh hin mitzumtzum. So actually, let's see in the Gemara. I'm reading ahead. So So I'll say, so the one who says that you take the measurements ultimately from greatest to smallest, that's the position of Rabbi Meir. Kasavar milayim shelo yechsar v'shelo yosir. Rabbi say he holds that Allah l'maisa, the way the measurements are arranged is that you have to measure the kelim exactly. Do not add more and do not take out. So the kelim have to be leveled, exactly leveled, not less, not more. But the mandamar who holds that, who reckons the 7 measurements from smallest to largest, that's Rabbi Huda. What does he hold? He holds malayim. When the pasuk says that it has to be malayim, shelo yechsar, it means it can't be deficient. Aval yosir, but I will say if you end up adding more to the kli, that's fine because malayim karina bay. Ultimately, again, that'll still be called malayim. Fine. Amar Mar. So we'll say, so therefore, this is a second version of the machlokes, Rabbi Yehuda Meir. In this version, they're not arguing about overflow. They're not arguing about ultimate. What was the lashon? Beirutze amidos. They're not arguing about overflow. Rather, what they're arguing about is, can you go ahead and add more to the utensil or not? One opinion telling me yes, one opinion telling me no. Fundamental machlokes rooted in the word malayim. What does malay mean? Does malay mean full and leveled, or does malay mean full and even if there's a bit more? Amar Mar, Rabbi Shimon Omer, lo haya sham hin. So we'll say, so listen to this. So going back now, Rabbi Shimon says ultimately that there was no measurement called a hin. Now the reason he holds, Rabbi Shimon holds there's no measurement called a hin because it was unnecessary. Because remember again, the only time hin was ever used was where Rabbi say, where? By the Shemen HaMishcha, by the creation of the anointing oil. The hin measurement is not part of everyday temple service. If it's not part of everyday temple service, then I don't need a designated utensil for it. So it says the Gemara, Shapir Kamer Luhu Rabbi Shimon the Rabbanon. So we'll say, Rabbi Shimon is saying good to the Rabbanon. So we'll say, again, this is another idea. In the Beis HaMikdash has nothing extra. There's no surplus. So whatever you need, you use. Or I should say, whatever you use, you have. Whatever you don't use, you don't have. So Rabbi Shimon says, why in a million years would we keep a utensil called, for the hin, a hin utensil, a hin measurement utensil, when there is nothing in temple service which requires a hin? To which the Gemara says, Rabbi Shimon is saying good to the Rabbanon. What would the Rabbanon say? For Rabbanon, have a hin da'avid Moshe l'shemen HaMishcha. The Rabbanon say, one second, there was a hin utensil. In other words, let's not rewrite history. There was a hin utensil. Moshe Rabbeinu made the hin utensil ultimately to create the shemen hamishcha. Now watch this. Dichsiv, the shemen zayis hin. Mar savar kevon ledoros lo hava. Sorry, kevon ledoros lo hava tzarich lefi shahu da'avdei v'ignas v'idach kevon da'hava hava. So listen to this. This is actually a fascinating machlokes. So Rabbi Shimon says, listen, the hin utensil was needed once in history for the creation of the Shemen HaMishcha. The reason, what do you mean once in history? So remember again, Moshe Rabbeinu made a very large batch of Shemen HaMishcha. Apparently you did not need to make more after the batch of Moshe Rabbeinu. It's hidden together with the Aron Habris. So therefore, once Moshe Rabbeinu made the Shemen HaMishcha, that's it. We don't need it anymore. We don't need the hin utensil anymore. Did Moshe Rabbeinu have a hin utensil? Did he have a hin utensil? Yes. What happened to it? It was put in Shemus. Right? It was put in Geniza. It was hidden away. But we don't need one now. On the other hand, that's Rabbi Shimon. On the other hand, the Rabbanan hold, Kevan dehava hava. We'll say Kevan dehava hava means that what? Once Moshe Rabbeinu made it, and it became part of the temple utensil collection, even though we do not use it ultimately for future generations, we still nevertheless maintain a hin utensil within the Beis HaMikdash. Amar Mar, Va'at mi avi tachtov. So we'll say, so the Gemara says, Lo sagi de lo ma'ayil. So we'll say, so the Gemara says, remember, after Rabbi Shimon takes out the hin from his list, so they say to him, "Nu, what are you going to substitute?" Right? Rabbi Shimon says, "What should I substitute instead?" So remember, what does he substitute instead? The lug and a half utensil. So asks the Gemara, "I don't understand. Why does he have to substitute anything? Let it just be that everyone else in the Mishnah holds that what Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Huda, Rabbi Meir hold that what there are 7 utensils, and Rabbi Shimon holds that what there are 6. Why does he need 7?" To which the Gemara says, "Ki da'amar Avina Gemiri shtei smichas b'tzibur." So we'll say, so the Gemara says, just like when it comes to smicha, we have a Masor that there are 2 times, that smicha is done on communal offerings, the par ha'elam davar shel tzibur, and the seir la'azazel. Hachenami gemiri t'sheva mido shalach hayu b'mikdash. So we'll say, to which the Gemara answers, because that's the Masorah. The Masorah is that there were 7 liquid measures. So Rabbi Shimon can't argue on the Masorah. Rabbi Shimon can maybe argue in terms of what? In terms of what the measurements were. But Lamaisa, the concept that there were 7, that's part of the Masorah. Rabbi Lazar Rabbi Tzadok Omer, Shnasos hayu behin. Veles le sheva midos. To which the Gemara says, take a look at Rashi for just a moment. So says the Gemara, let's just go back to the Gemara. So the Gemara, Rabbi Elazar Tzadok Omer, Shnasos hayu behin, veles lu sheva midos. Does he not hold the sheva midos? Lesle v'bais ema my sheva midos sheva medidos. So as I see, interestingly enough, the Gemara presents an alternate possibility. The alternate possibility is that maybe sheva midos doesn't necessarily mean 7 different utensils, but maybe in Rabbi Eliezer's model, Rabbi Elazar Baselek's model, ultimately again, what does sheva midos mean? Sheva medidos. That Rabbi said there were 7 different measures. That it could be that in Rabbi Elazar's model, he says sheva shenasos hayu behin, that there were 7 notches. 7 notches. So it could be that it's 1 utensil ultimately again with 7 different notches. And therefore again, what do you do with the Mishnah that says Sheva Midos? So in Rabbi Elazar's model, you have to say it said Sheva Medidos. Not Sheva Midos, 7 different measuring utensils, but rather 7 different measurements, 7 notches within the same utensil. Let's say, how do we paskin? So the Rambam paskins that halacha l'maisa in Beis HaMikdash, there were 7 different utensils. So which order? So we'll say, here's the good news. 6 out of 7, everyone's in agreement. What does he do about the hin? This is actually, right, this is like, we need to know. So was there a hin? Wasn't there a hin? And I will say, what's fascinating about this is, and everyone agrees on the Metzias. What's the Metzias? Was the hin used in the Beis HaMikdash? Was it used? No, right? It ultimately, again, was only used once in history for what? For the Shemen HaMishcha. So it's clear that it's not used in everyday temple service. But halacha l'maisa, was it one of the 7 utensils or not? To which the Rambam paskins, ve'eilanu davar limdod bohin. So the Rambam says, we have nothing that we need the hin for. Ve'lama hayasham. So if that's the case, says the Rambam, why was it in the Beis HaMikdash? Hoil v'haya b'mikdash mimei Moshe shemadad bo shemen l'shemen hamishcha. So ultimately, again, says the Rambam, halacha l'maisa. The Rambam says because it was used by Moshe Rabbeinu, v'lo mipnei ha'masim elu niskach al mnei ha'malachos shel mikdash shamarnu. The Rambam paskins that halacha l'maisa Rabbo say the hin utensil was in the Beis HaMikdash. Why? Kevan dehava hava. Once Moshe Rabbeinu used it for the shemen hamishcha, even though Rabbi say the pashtus, it sat there gathering dust because no one used it for anything. Nevertheless, halacha l'maisa, there was a hin measurement, a hin utensil in the Beis HaMikdash. Incredible. Says the Mishnah. Let's go weiter. Revius. So we'll say now we're going to go through. Now that we established the list of 7, it's very exciting. Now that we established the list of 7, so we'll say so now we're going to go through what each unit of liquid measurement was used for. So watch this. Here we go. Revius. Now we'll say, Revius, just to understand, Revius is a quarter of a lug. Revius lug. Quarter of a lug, what was he used for? Ma'isa mishameshes, Revius ma'im l'mitzora, or Revius shemen l'nazir. It was used for the Revius lug of the mitzora. Rashi says over here, he says, so remember again, Bosai by the Metzora, his process is that you have to go ahead and mix all the other items, the bird and everything else, with mayim chayim, right? With water. So how much water did you have to use for the Metzora process? Quarter of a lug. Urevius shemen lenazir. There was also a quarter of a lug of oil for the nazir. Now Rashi points out over here, what was the oil used for? It was used for the lechem, for the loaf offering of the nazir. So a quarter of a lug for the water of the metzora, which is the mayim chayim, quarter lug of the shemen for the nazir. Chatzi lug mahayim shamish. We'll say, what did you use the chatzi lug for? So the Gemara says, chatzi lug mayim l'sota. There was a half a lug of water used for the sota. Remember again, that's where the parchment is dissolved for the sota, and she drinks it. V'chatzi lug shemen l'toda, and we'll say there was a half a lug of oil used for the lachme toda, to mix into the toda loaves. Ubelug hayamodi l'chala menachos. And the lug was used, we'll say, for all other menachos. Afilu mincha shal samech isaron, no sin lo samech lug. We'll say that's very interesting. The halacha is, it was one lug of oil per isaron of flour. Let's say you brought a massive mincha of 60 isaron. So we'll say, how much oil does that require of you? 60 lugin. So we'll say, so what's the halacha? The only thing you had for your use in the Beis HaMikdash for the oil for the mincha was what? A one lug utensil, which means you filled up that lug, so you filled that 60 times. There was no like a big gulp, jumbo lug thing for a large mincha. It was always the one lug utensil. So even if you brought the massive mincha, you just kept filling it up as many times as you needed to. Rabbi Yaakov Omer, afilu mincha shal samech yisarn ein la'ela luga. So we'll say Rabbi Yaakov disagrees over here, not on a utensil but in the mincha. He holds that it is one lug of oil per mincha, no matter how big that mincha is. So what we're going to discuss is fundamental machlokes in Hilchos Karban Mincha. Is it one lug of oil per isaron, or is it one lug of oil per mincha? Shene'emar lemincha v'lug shemen lemincha v'lug shemen shisha lepar v'arba la'ayul u'shlosha lekeves. So we'll say, so again, here we say there are 6 lug for the par, 4 for the ayul, 3 for the keves, shlosha mechza lemenorah, 3.5 lug for the menorah. There we'll say that we saw that yesterday. That's a half a lug per candle for per kos. Chatzi lug l'chol ner. Ultimately, again, a half a lug for each and every. We call it ner. We translated as candle, but what it really means is kos. Each receptacle in the menorah. Ultimately, again, got a chatzi lug. So we'll say, here we go. Yosef Rebbe v'kakashile. So Rebbe was sitting. He was learning the Mishnah Kasha. Revius lema. What was the revius measurement consecrated for? Which also means, what was the revius measurement used for? Imitzora, if you want to say it's mitzora, so we'll say chutzu. Remember again, I don't need a klisharis, I don't need a consecrated utensil for the use of the mitzora. Why, Rabosai? Because the entire purification of the mitzora is done where? Chutz. Rashi points out, kol ma'asa b'shar nikonar v'lo ba'azara. Rabosai, the mitzora was purification process, took place quote unquote outside of the Beis HaMikdash. Remember, we actually learned this. It took place actually in the actual gateway by Shar Nikanor. Because it's outside of the Beis HaMikdash, quote unquote, I don't need a consecrated utensil. V'i nazir, and if you want to say ultimately again, the revius, the quarter lug utensil is used to measure out the oil for the loaves of the nazir. So lechem nazir b'shchitas ayil hu dekadish. The loaves of the nazir only become kadosh later on through the slaughtering of the ayil, which means what Rabbi was saying, that the loaves are already made even in a non-kadosh form. Because they're made in a non-kadosh form, then what? I don't need a consecrated measuring utensil for measuring out the oil for the loaves of the lachmei nazir. So I'm going to Rabbi I'll tell you why. You need the revius lug utensil, because I will say was with that revius lug that you measured out the oil for the special mincha of the kohen gadol. Revius shemen l'chol chala v'chala. Ultimately, again, because the chavite kohen gadol used a quarter of a lug of oil for every loaf. So we'll say, so that's what you use the quarter of the lug for. A revius for every single loaf. Kari alei me'eretz merchak ish atzasi. So this is actually quite beautiful. So remember again, This was Rebbe who was sitting and pondering this. Rabbi Chia gave him the answer, and Rebbe said about Rabbi Chia, quoting the pasuk from Yeshayahu, Me'eretz merchak ish atzasi, from a faraway land, a great man came and gave me counsel. Rashi points out, Rabbi Chia made aliyah. He used to live in Bavel. He moved to Eretz Yisrael. Rebbe was living in Eretz Yisrael, and he said, a man from a faraway land came and gave me counsel. He was praising Rabbi Chia for his wisdom. Weiter. Chatzi lug mahaya mishamish. The Bible say, what was the half a lug used for? Yosef Ravashi vikakashile. Chatzi lug lemanim shach. What Bible says, remember again, I just want to point out, these measuring utensils in the Beis HaMikdash, I will say these were consecrated utensils. This was not stam measuring utensils. They were consecrated. Now what the Gemara is asking over here is, I understand the need for measuring utensils. What I'm trying to understand is why I need consecrated measuring utensils. For what purpose is the consecration? So here we go. Is sota. If you want to say it's sota, that I need ultimately again the chatzi lug to measure out the water for the sota. But say that's not true. Remember again, where was the water of the sota taken from? So in fact, interestingly enough, it was taken from the kiyur. It was taken from the sink in the Beis HaMikdash. We'll say that water was already consecrated. Because it was consecrated, it does not need a klishares, it does not need a consecrated measuring utensil to measure it out. It was already kadosh. Itoda, if you want to say to measure out again the half a lug of oil for the lachmei toda. Lachmei toda b'shchitas toda hu dekadshi. Both say the loaves of a toda only become consecrated later on during the time when the actual toda is shechted. Which means I both say I don't need the oil of the lachmei toda to be in a consecrated utensil, because even if it's in a consecrated utensil, the loaves themselves do not become consecrated until later. So Rabbi Shimon Rebbe says, I'll tell you what we need it for. We need it for shebo hayimechalik chatzi lug shema lechol ner v'ner. Both say the half lug measurement was necessary. Why? To measure out the half a lug of oil for each and every receptacle in the menorah. Amar lo ner Yisrael kachaya. So we'll say, so again, so beautifully. So Rebbe, once again complimenting, this time Rabbi Shimon Rebbe, says to him, ner Yisrael. He calls him the ner Yisrael. You are the light of all Israel. Kachaya. This indeed is what was done. Okay, it's a good Rebbe praising him. Rabbi Yochanan, Rebbe. Both say, listen, this is a fascinating case, and this is amazing, by the way, because last night we just started the Shulchan Aruch Chabura. We just started Hilchos Chanukah, so this is amazing. Obviously, this is not Hilchos Chanukah. This is Hilchos Beis Hamikdash. But Hilchos Chanukah, as we have it, right? Again, the whole Meisach Chanukah is about the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash. So here we go. Ner shekavsa nichna Hashem and nichna psila. Let's listen to this interesting case. You have in the Av of the menorah. So I will say, so what happened over here is one of the wicks go out. One of the wicks go out. Now Rashi points out over here. Rashi points out Nitshan Hashem, and it's actually, if you're actually looking at Rashi Kisvei Yad, the bottom Rashi, about 5 lines in. Nitshan Hashem Kolomar Nismalish Manomi Deshna Psila and Yochal Haliko Ad Shem Dash. Supposed to listen to this case. So the case over here is the wick extinguished, but what ends up happening is the wick itself dissolves a little bit into the oil, effectively rendering the oil unfit. So this is talking about a candle in the Beis HaMikdash which went out prematurely. So watch this. So what's the halacha? Ketzarosa. So what do you do the next morning? Mativa v'nosin b'shemen umadlika. So you go ahead and say, and what? You clean it out. You clean it out, or I shouldn't say the next morning. What should you do? What should you do again when you want to relight it? Says the Gemara. What do you do? So mativa, you clean it out. V'nosin b'shemen umadlika, and you put in the requisite amount of oil, and you go ahead and relight it. So Rashi says over here, look at regular Rashi for just a moment. So ner shekavsa b'chatzi halayla o kodem or hayom. So we'll say, so the idea over here is the menorah was supposed to remain lit really until the next morning. The case over here is it's going out in the middle of the night or sometime before daybreak. So what do you do? So Rashi says over here, Keitzaru Ose, Mativa Shemashlich Komash Shevener Lochutz, Venosen Bashemanu Psila Charosumadlika. So we'll say, presumably, what do you do over here? You go ahead, you clean it out, and you relight it. You relight it. So if it goes out, you relight it. So watch this. Yosef Rabbi Zrika v'kami ba'ile. Both says Rabbi Zrika had the following kasha. This is fascinating. Kishunosim b'shemen kamida rishona o kimo shechasra. So we'll say, see here the shaila. Remember how much oil was placed in the nair? How much oil was placed in each nair? How much oil? So remember, what was the amount? Meaning, where do we get the amount from? It's the amount that was necessary to allow it to remain lit throughout the night. I now have a nair that went out. So what do I have to do? Relight it. What's the shaila? How much oil do you put back in? Right? Do you go ahead? Kishunosin b'shemen kimida rishona. Do I put in a full half lug? O kimoshe chasra. Or I will say, do I go ahead and put only back in essentially the necessary amount? Meaning, do I look at the amount ultimately again that was used up and only put in the amount of oil less that amount? In other words, what the Gemara is asking over here is, do you put in the full measure or do you just put in enough to get the menorah till the morning? Good kasha. Rabbi Yirmiyah, pshita di kemida rishona. Rabbi Yirmiyah says it's pashit. It's pashit that you put in the full half a lug. Di'i kama shechasra. Listen to this, Rabosai. Menaya dinan maichiser. Because Rabosai, otherwise you're talking about imprecise measurements. How do you know how? First of all, Rabosai, it's also assuming that you saw exactly when the menorah went out. For all you know, the Kohen went ahead. He's on break. Kohanim are union also, right? Right? He's on break, right? So what happens? He's on break. He comes back. So how does he know when it went out? So we'll say. So therefore, again, the Gemara says obviously it has to be that you clean out the menorah, put in the full half lug of oil, because how can you measure how much was used, how much is left? So the Gemara says I can't measure. So we'll say so no, I absolutely can't measure. What can I do about it? I can take a half lug utensil, pour out the oil into the half lug, and what? See how much oil is left in there. Oh, im kain. The Gemara says, no, you can't. Sheva midos nafish lehu midos tuvos. But say, I tell you why you can't. Because if you're going to start measuring out something else, then what? Then it turns out that you have more than 7 measurements. See, say, if there is such a process of measuring out residual oil, then it turns out it's so interesting. No? Yeah. So it turns out that's what I'm saying, that you're going to have many more than 7 measurements. You're going to have multiple different measurements because you're going to be measuring out residual oil. So therefore, therefore it has to be that what? It has to be that halacha l'maisa, when the menorah goes out, you replace the oil, you replace the wick, you pour out all of the old oil. Now this is dafka, a case where the oil that's left up gets messed up by the wick inside of it. It appears from this Gemara that halacha l'maisa, if the oil was still fine, just something happened with the wick, you could replace the oil, you could replace the remaining oil, and ultimately again just put in there a new wick. But assuming that the oil itself gets messed up, empty it out, replace it with a full half lug. Kari aleis, Rabbi say this is all Rebbe. Once again, Rebbe says about Rabbi Zrika, and he says ultimately the following. This is Rabbi Zrika sitting and says Rabbi Yirmiyah says Kari alei the Hajj. He quotes over here the pasuk from Tehillim. Va'darchat slach. Ultimately, again, your hadar, your beauty should go on and be successful. Rachav al dvar emes va'anvat tzedek. So again, he praises Rabbi Yirmiyah for his incredible wisdom. Itmar nami Rabosi. I have another brayso that supports this idea. Am Rabbi Avo, Am Rabbi Yochanan, Am Rabbi Abba, Am Rabbi Chanina, Am Rabbi. Ner shekavsa. We'll say if a candle in a light and fire in the menorah goes out, nitshan hashemen, and the oil becomes unusable. Nidashna psila. So we'll say, and the wick itself becomes unusable. What do you do? Kitzur oseh mativa venosein b'shemen kemida rishona umadlika. We'll say the halacha is you empty out the contents of the particular receptacle, you fill it up with oil, and you rekindle it. We'll say, and that indeed is halacha l'maisa, incredible halacha l'maisa. Amrav Huna Rav Yeshua, Rav Yehuda, Amrav Sheshes, Ner Sheva Mikdash Shal Prakim Hayr. We'll say another amazing Gemara. So we'll say comes along. Rav Huna says the name of Rabbi Yehuda, name of Rav Sheshes, the menorah in the base of Mikdash Shal Prakim. We'll say Shal Prakim literally means of pieces. Now, what does that mean of pieces? If you look at Rashi Kisvei, we'll say the bottom Rashi, 6 lines up from the bottom. Shal Prakim, Shal Chulios. Lo shal chulios ma mishuch ala parkin or salkam min menorah el shiach ala kofef ala mato or luzokum kam. Both say, get ready for this. This is wild. Comes along Rav Huna Rav Yeshua and says as follows: the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash was malleable, which means that Rabbi say you could take the branches and you could bend them down. Why do you need to bend them down? To clean them. They're malleable. Rabbi say not detachable. Not detachable. I know, is malleable the right word? Right? Malleable. Right? They were malleable. You could literally move them in order to go ahead and clean them. Amazing. Kasavar. Kiksiv. Umiksha. Amenorah v'nero seksiv. Because the say he holds that when the pasuk says that the menorah has to be made miksha, miksha means what? Out of one block of gold. What does that refer to? That refers to the menorah as well as the branches. The menorah has to be one solid piece of gold. Because of that, what we call the neros, which are the actual branches of the menorah, cannot be detachable. But they can be what? They can be movable. So allowing them to be movable allows you to clean them. Ksiv. So Gemara says, and since you have to clean the bulbs, you have to clean the receptacles, ilav de prakim havi, if they were not movable, if they were not malleable, lahavim metayva, you can never clean them sufficiently. So the Gemara says, meisvei or eisa kasha, ketzad oseh. How do you go ahead and clean the menorah? Misalkan, you actually remove the branches. Umanichan ba'ohel, and you leave them in the Beis HaMikdash. Mekanchon bisvug, you clean them with a sponge. V'nosin b'shemen, and then you put oil in them. Umadligan. Wow. So what do you see from this brisa? What do you see from this brisa? That the branches were detachable. So a fundamental historical machlokes about the menorah. Was the menorah one big piece with malleable branches, or was the menorah again made up of multiple parts, the base being one piece, but the branches being detachable? Hu damar ki aitana. So we'll say he was like the following time. The Sanyo chachamim omrim lo haya mezizin osamim koma. The chacham say that we would not move the branches from their place. Michlal di iboy leila azuze matzi mazizle. They both say now the inference that the chacham have to tell me do not move the branches from their place. So both say, what does that tell me? What does that tell me? That if I wanted to, I could. Which sounds like the branches are technically detachable. Michlas, the Gemara says, Ela ema lo haisa zoza mimkoma. No. The way it should be read is the branches were not movable. They could not be moved from place. Uman chachamim, who are the chachamim? Rabbi Lazar, who desanya Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Tzadok Omer, kimin tas shalzav hayala al gaba. We'll say ultimately, we'll just read this piece and we'll have to stop for today. That ultimately there was like a gold plate on top of the cups of the menorah. Kishu mativa, when he wanted to clean out the cups, he would push the, so we'll say, if you can imagine, it's like a flap on top. It was a flap on top to keep impurities from coming inside. So when he was cleaning it out, he would push the flap towards the opening of the utensil, of the cup. When he wanted to put in oil, he would push the flap back. So we'll say, ultimately, again, what we're going to see is that halacha lemaisa ubeplukta dani tanoi, that this is going to be a machlokes tanoim about the nature of the menorah. So also we'll have to stop over here for today. But again, you don't want to miss this tomorrow. Right? A fundamental machlokes about how the menorah itself was fashioned. Was it one piece? Was it multiple pieces? Was it one piece with immovable branches? Or was it one piece with malleable branches? And Eretz Hashem to be seen tomorrow.